All right, everybody, welcome. It is now the bottom of the hour, so we can go ahead and get started. I'll do one more entreaty. If you haven't yet muted your phone, go ahead and please do so. *1 on this particular call does the trick to mute and unmute. I know that may be different for you on some other conference calls. The key sequence of keys that you press to mute change, maybe a little different, but on this one it happens to be *1. I think what I'm going to do, there's some kind of persistent background noise. I want to go ahead and mute everybody. Hold up. Okay, sorry about that. There was a little bit of persistent background noise, so I just went ahead and put everyone on mute. You can use *1 at any time to come off of mute. We'll be able to hear what you've got to say. So again, welcome everybody. This is going to be our RC View DAT Dispatch class on working as a duty officer. Please note that we are recording this class. We are recording this session, so it may wind up posted for others to view, so please just be cognizant of that. And we will go ahead and dive into our session. Really quickly, a quick summary of why we're here and what we're working to do. Here's what we're hoping that you guys will be able to do at the end of this session. One is to be able to accept event notifications, including automated event notifications if your region ever decides to use those, or maybe your region is already using those. We're going to talk about how you can activate DAT responses, how you can get that DAT response going using the system, and then after you've activated them, how you can monitor them and also provide support. And we'll also talk about how you can create new event records in the system and also update existing event records. I mean, the business of monitoring and supporting DAT responses, has a lot of updating existing event records, so you're going to kind of get a lot of that as we go. But we may speak to that a little separately at the end as well. So before we go any further, real quick introductions. My name is Andy. I will be taking you through the session this evening. I'm the training lead for RC View. I've got a great group of panelists on this afternoon to help us out and to support all of you guys. We've got Clara Von Enns from Disaster Cycle Services. She is on the RC View deployment team. And then we also have from the HIT training team, we've got Arnold and Derek and Susan, and we're all here to help you guys out. So you will be communicating potentially with one or more of those panelists as we go. So a big thanks to them for being here. Some kind of rules of the road during the session. Again, in this particular conference call, *1 is the key for muting and unmuting your phone. You guys are most welcome to ask questions as we go. Feel free to come off of mute and ask a question. And you are also, of course, welcome to send questions in via chat. Now, one quick tip, if you're going to send a question in via chat, you've got that chat box over on the right-hand side of your WebEx screen. Down below the list of participants, there's a big text box. Well, it's not big. There's a text box besides the send button where you can type your message. And just above that text box is a send to drop-down menu. And I recommend you send your questions in to the host, the presenter, and the panelist. That's one of the choices on that drop-down menu. Because if you do that, the whole panel will see your question and you'll get a faster response in that way. Okay, if you send it just to one person, they may be busy doing something else, and it may be a little while before you get a response. So I would recommend send those chats in, but please do send them to the host, presenter, and the panelist. Every now and then, like we had to do at the very start, we will go into lecture mode. I'll let you know when we do that. That basically mutes everybody but me. But we'll come right out of it. But when we come out of it, everybody will be muted, so you will need to press *1 in order to unmute your phone. Okay, so there's some things to keep in mind during the session. One point about questions, again, we do encourage you to ask them as we go. Either come off of mute or send them in via chat. We are teaching this class for the second time. We taught it for the first time yesterday, and it used up every bit of the allotted time. Okay, so we may reach a point in the session, just kind of depending on how our pacing goes, where we will postpone answering questions until the end, just to ensure we get through all the material. But we'll see when we get there. Okay, we'll kind of take that as we go. In terms of course credit in EDGE, a couple things to keep in mind. You know, if you're here and you're here throughout the class and you registered through EDGE, we will happily give you credit for the class. You do need to be registered through EDGE in order to receive credit. And we run a report out of WebEx to see who attended and when they joined and how long they stayed and all that. If you are, I know sometimes you guys will attend classes or webinars like these together in a small group. If your name is not listed on the list of participants, but you're watching with someone else, please have that person send us a chat and let us know you're here. Otherwise, we won't know that you were with us tonight. So give us a heads up as to anyone who is joining as part of a kind of a small group attendance plan. Some reassurances here. We do have a high number of training materials, reference resources out there for you guys to use. We've got a job tool that's available to you. These training slides we're going to go through, they're available. We've got videos that cover the DAT dispatch workflow and the 3 different ways that we can activate a DAT response. And we also hold regular office hours where you guys can just come and ask questions. And, you know, we'll give you more details on that at the end of class, but I just want you to know going in that these materials are available. Okay, so don't have any anxiety around that, please. One thing I kind of skipped over, sorry about that, we talked about our objectives. In terms of our audience, you guys are our audience, our intended audience for the class, our duty officers. And those are you guys who are filling the role of duty officer in terms of working in RC View DAT Dispatch. You may or may not at this point have an official duty officer position from the DAT program, but you're doing duty officer work. We are focusing the class primarily to the regions that are currently in the process of implementing RC View DAT Dispatch as part of the Readiness Initiative, right? There are 14 regions that are in that process right now, and here are those 14 regions. They're listed here. If you are with us but are not from one of those 14 regions, that is, of course, fine, but I would give you the heads up that you won't be able to apply a lot of what we're going to talk about today until much later when your region is going through the implementation process. The other column on this table lists the implementation lead for each of these implementing regions. If you're not sure who your implementation lead is, go ahead and please take a moment to make a note of that. Your implementation lead's a great point of contact for you locally in regard to RC View DAT Dispatch and this deployment of it. We will reference the implementation leads from time to time. They can get you training materials that you may not be able to access yourself through our SharePoint site. So they're critical people, and it's important for you to know who they are. Okay, so having said all that, let's go ahead and get cooking and start with an introduction to working as a duty officer. And this slide is showing you we really have 2 different ways that the whole event notification and DAT activation process can begin. And the difference in these 2 starting places lies in who actually gets notified about a disaster event, for example, a single family fire. In some cases, a dispatcher takes that call. Okay, maybe your region is working with National Dispatch and they take your calls some or all of the time. So National Dispatch may be filling this role. Some of you guys may be working with a third-party dispatcher who takes that call. And, you know, they create an event record in RC View DAT Dispatch, and then they make sure that a duty officer is notified of the event, right? And there are different ways to do that, and we'll talk more about that in a second. The other way that the whole process might start is that the duty officer, you guys, right, the duty officer, his or herself, may take the call directly from the fire department or from the client, okay, or whoever's calling in to alert us to this disaster event. Okay, so that's the other way that it can start. So that's why we've got a different start to this process. But either way, Once a duty officer is involved, either because they took the call directly or because a dispatcher took the call and then alerted them to the call's existence, after that, the process is the same. Okay, the duty officer is going to determine, will the Red Cross respond? And if yes, the duty officer activates a DAT response. Okay, and once that response is activated, here are other things that the duty officers do in support and monitoring of the event responses. One, they determine are additional DAT members needed to be activated. Do you have enough coverage for the response? They monitor to make sure everybody who is assigned to the event makes it to the event location. Okay, you guys can assign a Red Cross vehicle to a response if you want to do that, if you feel like you need to do that. You can follow notes that responders are entering in through the DAT app, and you can, of course, communicate directly with responders when needed while they are responding. And then you can also monitor to see if all the responders have left an event location. So those are things that you will regularly do with an event response or in relation to an event response as a duty officer. Every now and then, a little less often, a little less likely, you may need to cancel an event response, or if you're working a response at the end of your shift, you may need to hand it off to someone else. You may need to transfer that event response over to another duty officer. Okay. So, this is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is you're going to activating, you're taking that notification, activating a DAT response, and then doing the monitoring and support work. Okay. All right. Now, let's go ahead and I want to take a quick poll and just to get a sense of some of you guys and the work that you're doing today. So up above the chat box, there's a series of emoticons. There's a green check mark up there. And I want to ask you guys a couple of questions because I know we have a lot of regions that are already using the system and they have a number of duty officers. If you have already been working as a duty officer in using RC View DAT Dispatch, maybe you're getting automated notifications or you know that you're signing up on a duty officer schedule inside of RC View DAT Dispatch. If you're already working as a duty officer and have some familiarity with the system, go ahead and click a green check mark so that I know how many folks we have that are already doing this. Okay, we definitely have some folks. All right. Not a huge percentage, but a meaningful percentage. Okay. All right. Excellent. I'm going to clear these emoticons. Of you guys that have been working already as a duty officer in the system, how many of you are receiving calls directly from the fire department or directly from clients as opposed to receiving calls only from a dispatcher? Is anybody already taking direct calls? If you are, go ahead and click that green check mark. Okay, don't have a lot of that. All right, excellent. And then the final question I'm going to wait for. So we're going to move ahead just a little bit more here. And we're going to talk about acknowledging disaster-created events. So in terms of those, the two workflows that we were looking at earlier, we're going to initially put our attention on this one, the one where the dispatcher takes a call and creates an event record. Okay, so we're going to sort of start our attention there. At the end of class, we will turn our attention to creating an event in the system, doing what you do if you're the person who takes that call directly. Okay. All right. So in terms of acknowledging disaster-created events, let's go all the way to the start of the process and talk about what happens when a dispatcher receives an event notification. Okay, they go into RC View DAT Dispatch and they create a record. They fill out a call form and create an event record. And when they do so, one of the really important things that they do is enter the address, okay? And they have to enter the event address carefully. Okay, everybody, I went ahead and muted everybody. We were getting some background noise there. So if you need to ask a question, please use *1 to come off of mute. So they enter that address in such a way that the system geocodes the location. Okay, it recognizes what the latitude and longitude are for that event address. Okay, it knows precisely where on Earth that occurs. Okay, so it's one of the important things that a dispatcher does. And because the system knows exactly where the event occurred, it knows what county the event occurred in and what DAT territory or DAT response area it occurred in. And because it knows those things, it knows what duty officer schedule is relevant for the event response. And if it knows the relevant duty officer schedule, it knows who's on call as a duty officer right now. Okay, so the system can go from the event address that gets entered on the call form or the event record, and from there it can identify who needs to be contacted right away to serve as the duty officer for that event. Okay, and this is what a duty officer schedule looks like. You can see that we've got different positions listed here, like duty officer on call, backup on call, reserve on call, DPS on call, and so forth. And these blue blocks are shift blocks. These are shifts that people have signed up for or been assigned by the regional leadership staff that control the duty officer schedules. And so the system can look here and know who is currently on call. And then at that point, the duty officer gets notified in one of two ways, okay, either automatically by the system or manually by a dispatcher. And before we get into the difference there, I do see we have a question, and Susan, I see you're gonna respond to it, but I think it's an important question, so I'm going to speak to it as well. And the question is, if the house is off the grid with no address, how does the geocode get entered, right? So if you're dealing with an address that the system does not recognize that it has an address, right? The system, the way the geocoding happens is the dispatcher or you guys, and we'll talk about that at the end of class, are entering that address, and you enter part of the address, and the system gives you a list of matching addresses, and you choose the appropriate one, and that's how the geocoding happens. If the system doesn't recognize the address, right, if the address is, off the grid, as the asker indicates, what we do in that case is we just enter the city and state and zip code as opposed to including the street address. The system can geocode based on the city and state and zip code, and then the system still knows which schedule to point the event to. Okay, when that happens, we do need to enter into the dispatcher notes or the duty officer notes, typically in the dispatcher notes, what the actual address is for that event. Okay, because people have to know where they're going, but entering the city and state and zip does allow the geocoding to occur. Okay, great question. Thank you for that. So in terms of notification types, right, so the dispatcher creates the event. The dispatcher indicates that the Red Cross action is required, and that results in an event record. And again, the system looks at the address, figures out the schedule, and then one of two things happens. Either the system, if it's an automatic duty officer schedule set up by your regional leadership, then the system will start contacting duty officers automatically. If it's manual, the dispatchers start doing that, okay? And let's talk first about, actually, at this point I want to do the one last poll. Sorry about that. Let me clear any emoticons that are out there. For those of you that have been working in the system already as duty officers, if you are using automatic duty officer schedules, you're getting notified directly by the system, give a green check mark. I'm just trying to get a sense of how many folks are going automatic out there. Okay. We have some, not a ton, but we do have some. Okay. Okay, so everybody will get a sense now of what these automatic duty officer schedules look like. So if a duty officer schedule is set up to be automatic, the system, automatically starts sending event notifications to the duty officers, and it contacts them per their notification preferences, right? So a given duty officer can be contacted via voice, like via a robocall, via text message, and or via email. And the system calls down that duty officer schedule by position, right? So first it'll contact any duty officers who are on call, then any backups, then reserves, and so forth. Typically, regional leadership will set up these schedules so that there's only one person scheduled at a time in each of those positions, so only one person is getting automatically contacted at a time. If someone does set up a schedule so that multiple people are scheduled at once, for example, if instead of just Susan being scheduled right now for a given duty officer position, if this blue box were over here underneath of Susan's, then both of them could be automatically contacted at the same time. If Susan accepts before Arnold, the system sends Arnold an email indicating that somebody else has already accepted the event. And that's why typically people schedule one person at a time in each of these positions, right, to kind of avoid that potential confusion that could occur. And then, that's kind of why we have duty officer, backup, and reserve, so you can break people out in that way, and the system will contact first one, then the next, and then the next. Okay, so what happens when these automated notifications kick off? So the system will send an initial notification to that first position, to the people scheduled as duty officer. It'll wait 5 minutes for a response. If it doesn't register a response in those 5 minutes, it'll send a second one. And if it doesn't register a response for the second one, then it will move on to the next position. So it just works on down the schedule in that way. If it works all the way down the schedule and nobody accepts an event notification, then a dispatcher will recognize that. They'll get a pop-up message. They'll know what's going on, and at that point they contact the RDO, okay, to make sure somebody is aware of that event. Now, manual notification, of course, the dispatcher is manually calling down the list of those people who are on call, and they too start at the top of the list. And at an event record, it's really easy for dispatchers to see who is currently on call. And so they just look down the list here, and they start calling, and the contact information is listed right here for them. Okay, so that's the difference, and that's how the manual notification works. Okay. All right. So we're about to do a demonstration. I see we have a couple of questions pending. I will see the panelists may be able to address those. I'll go ahead and do this demonstration. And then if we have any questions still pending, we will just get caught up with questions at that point, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen. So give me just a minute to do that. And I was actually in the process of pretending I was a dispatcher, and I have this event created, but I just haven't clicked OK on it yet. Okay, I haven't saved it. And so this is a single-family fire event. Here is a nice geocoded address in Raleigh, North Carolina. The fire department has called this in to a dispatcher. Okay, Red Cross action is required. This came into National Dispatch. We can see that immediate action is required. It's a single-family fire. We have the client is on scene. Okay, and here's the client's information. So I'm just going to come down here and click OK, because I happen to know that I'm scheduled as the duty officer on the relevant schedule. So I'm going to click OK to finish the process of creating this event. Okay, and so this event, by the way, the address, just for all of our reference, was 225 North Brook Drive. And so bear with me for just a second. I should be getting a text message here in a second telling me that I'm needed for this event. The system does run workflows to make things happen. So you can see the call is saved, the automatic dispatch is happening. So things don't happen instantly. It may take, a little bit of time, a minute or so, for things to start happening. I just got an email. I suspect that's an email notification, and my text just arrived. So I'm just going to go ahead and accept this. And somebody's calling me right at that moment. Charming. Hang on one second. Let me just accept this text. Okay. All right. I want to confirm. It's 215 Northbrook, not 255. So anyway, let me say I'm going to take the call. Okay. So I just answered via text message that I'm going to be the person who works this event. And so here the event is. Right, so if I'm the dispatcher, I can open this event record up for 215 Northbrook Drive, and I can go in here and edit it. You can see I was listed as the duty officer on call, and let's scroll down here, and you can see. Oh, hang on. I think I got in there too fast. Again, we've got to let the workflows happen. Let's go back to my event. Let the system refresh. Okay, now we're in business. Notice subtly, and we'll talk more about event statuses later, it went from dispatch to requested. So that means now it knows that I'm the duty officer. So I'm going to go in here and edit this. Scroll down here a little bit, and you can see it knows that the duty officer is Andy, Arizona. Here was the phone number. Here is when I accepted it, and it assigned me as the duty officer in that way. Okay, so that's kind of what it's like to go in and, that's that relationship between an automatic schedule, an automatic duty officer schedule, a duty officer accepting an event notification, and then the system registering their acceptance in that way. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and stop sharing, and let's get caught up on any pending questions. Does anyone on the phone have a question? You can use *1 to come off of mute, or if there's anything pending in chat. And panelists, just a reminder that you guys too would need to use *1 to come off of mute. Okay.
Nothing in chat.
Okay. All right. Nothing in chat. That's great, but it sounds like somebody might have a question. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Hi. This is Heidi Gantman. I'm trying to get onto, I'm on the phone, obviously, but I'm trying to get onto the web. Both Mary Noel and I are, and we were having an issue with it. I never received the email, so.
Well, you don't, the information, the link to the information to join is also available through a link in Edge. If you go to your transcript in Edge, one of our panelists will help you. We can shoot you the document that shows you how to do that if you can't track down that email.
Yeah, because I'm in Edge now.
Okay. Yeah, we can't stop the whole we can't stop the whole class to talk you through that process. I apologize, but what's your email address? I'll tell you what, do this for me. This is hang on. This is the fastest way to do it. I apologize. If you could send mail right now to RC View at redcross.org.
Okay.
We will answer that mail with the document that you need to learn to see how to do that through Edge.
Okay, so it's RC View at redcross.org.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you. Okay, I think we're caught up. Perfect. So let's keep moving ahead. want a little bit more information around these automated notifications and really just your general use of RC View DAT Dispatch is that around your contact information and notification preferences. Bear in mind that your contact information, for example, your email address and the various phone numbers that you might have listed, we don't enter those in RC View. Okay, you enter those in Volunteer Connection, and they are fed over into RC View. So if your email changes or you get a new cell phone or something along those lines, you need to make those updates in Volunteer Connection, and they will automatically feed into RC View. Now, on the other hand, in RC View, that's where you manage your notification preferences, right? Do you want the system contacting you through automated voice notifications, text messages, and or email? Okay, so there are checkboxes through the DAT app. It's really simple to go in and indicate what your notification preferences are. A couple things to keep in mind. If you want to receive text messages, you do have to have an SMS text number listed on your Volunteer Connection member profile. Just having a cell phone listed won't suffice. There's a separate field there for SMS text number. You know, it's very often going to be the same number as your cell phone number, but you do have to have a value in SMS text, okay, in order to receive text messages. A couple other points of wisdom. If you're going to receive automated voice notifications, you want to restrict yourself in RC View through the DAT app to one phone listing. When you have multiple phone listings, not SMS text, but there are 4 different phone listings. If you have multiple phone listings selected, that can cause problems with accepting voice notifications because sometimes a different phone gets answered before you get to it, or different things can happen that confuse the system. If you are someone who has both a primary and a secondary email address on your Volunteer Connection member profile, if you choose to get email notifications, they're going to go to both. Okay, so just know that the same email will be going to both accounts. And we have all that information and more detail is in a document that's available to you called Using the RC View DAT app. And there's also a video on the DAT app logging in and setting your preferences. Okay, so they've got lots of resources to help you with that. Just to give you a quick sense of what it looks like, we won't spend a ton of time on this, but let me share with you guys again. I don't think I shared. Oh yeah, I did. Okay, so now I'm shared. What I'm going to do, I'm going to move this thing for a minute. I thought I was going to move that thing. No, never mind. Okay. Oh, there we go. I'm going to actually log out of this instance, and I'm going to, I'll come back here later, and I'm going to log into the web-based version of the app. And then you guys might not all be aware of this. I mean, we have the desktop version of the system that we were just looking at. There's the mobile app that people can have on their smartphones or tablets, but you can also mimic the mobile app through the web, right? There's a web-based version of the mobile app, and it's just different URL to log in, and this is what it looks like. So I'm going to come in here and log in. And it's just like logging into our training environment. It's just a little different URL. And it does open up. It's configured a little differently than what you see on an app or, on a phone or a tablet, because it shoves this stuff over to the side instead of having everything vertical. You can resize your window if you want to mimic the exact layout of a tablet or phone. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you where the contact information and so forth lives. This is where you can set your time zone. I've already set mine to Eastern. But here on the email line, you can see that I have chosen to get email notifications. I've got a single email listed in Volunteer Connection. I can't update this here, right, because that's coming from Volunteer Connection. Under phone, SMS, okay, I have SMS text chosen as a way to get notifications. I've got an SMS text number listed, so I'm okay. And I've also chosen to get notified on my cell phone for voice notifications. Okay, this is when I said only pick one phone. phone type, this is what I meant. You only want to pick one of these four if you want to get voice notifications. And so that's, that's how easy it is to go into the DAT app or to the web-based version of the app and set your preferences. Okay, so that's what that's all about. I'm going to go ahead and log out of here. And we'll go back here in just a second. Okay. All right. So just a few more bits of information on receiving. If you're receiving automated notifications or your region is going to receive automated notifications, there is that 5-minute window to respond. And the system will not register an acknowledgement that it happens after the 5 minutes have passed. If you're getting voice notifications, you need to hear the whole message before you press to respond to either say, I'll take this one or no. Keep in mind that text messages, you have to reply to the text messages. The key to replying or the words for replying aren't always the same. So read the message and make sure you're replying with what it's expecting. And if you're getting an email, you will see a URL in that email to accept an event, right, or to not accept an event. Depending on your email browser, that URL may be a hyperlink that you can click directly on or not. Okay, if on my browser, very often in Google Chrome, it does not come across as a clickable link. If that's the case, you can just copy and paste it into another browser, and that does the trick. And if you're responding by email, keep a close eye on that 5-minute window because it's a little tricky. If you say to an email message, I want to respond, and you do that outside of the 5-minute window, like you do it at the 7-minute mark, the system's going to look like you've accepted it successfully. Okay, you won't, and so that's something to keep an eye on. When you go into the system, you'll be able to tell whether it's recognized you as the duty officer. You saw how it automatically entered all that stuff when I did that. But keep a really close eye if you're accepting an email notification. Keep an eye on that 5-minute window. Okay, and we do have a document just on this topic, receiving and responding to automated system messages. Okay, so that's what we have this evening on the first step of that process, which is receiving those notifications. So just open it up one last time for questions on that topic. Anybody have anything else on their mind before we turn to activating a DAT response? Okay. All right. If not, let's plow ahead here. So after you do that work of acknowledging a notification, you're going to need to, go to RC View DAT Dispatch. You're going to have to log into the system and start the work of activating the response. Okay, and the first step after you log in is you do need to locate the event record. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. If it's a manual dispatch, you do need to select yourself at the call forms assigned to field. That happens automatically for automatic notifications, but if for manual notifications, you do need to tell the system that record's assigned to you, that puts the event on your My DO Events tab. Okay. It also, shows up in other places that you're the duty officer. If desired, these aren't things you're necessarily going to do every time, but you can record a rally point for the event, okay, and that shows up to responders through the DAT app. And you can also record duty officer notes if you have additional information that you want to share. Okay, those duty officer notes don't show up in the DAT app, but they do go out in any sort of automated assignment or response request, not assignment, but response request to your DAT members, right? So if you're doing an automated notification of DAT members and they get a text message, for example, they will see the duty officer notes in that text message. You're also going to need to record event verification information, if this is an event where you need to do that. And that, of course, may depend on, where did the notification originally source from, right? Did it come from a fire department, or did it come directly from a client or a neighbor, somewhere, a source that we would feel like we needed to do an event verification. And then finally, sort of the big ticket item here, all this stuff is important, but in terms of activating a response, The big ticket item is you're going to indicate whether or not the Red Cross will respond. Okay, and there's literally a field in the system that says, will the Red Cross respond? And then you're going to say yes or no. And then you're going to save. And if you say yes there, okay, that's how you activate a response in the system. Okay, that's the key to it all. Indicate that the Red Cross will respond. That tells the system, hey, I'm activating a DAT response. And at that point, the system starts doing stuff automatically. Those workflows start running. We'll talk obviously in more depth momentarily about all these things, but among the things the system starts doing is displaying pop-ups, and those pop-ups help you know if things are going smoothly or if we've hit a snag. Okay, and we'll look at the pop-ups in more detail here in just a second. Okay, so in order to do this, you are going to need to log into the system. Some of you guys, have not done that before. Here is the URL for RC View DAT Dispatch. You can just go to rcview.redcross.org. I do recommend entering that directly into your browser, as opposed to, for example, Googling RC View and clicking on links that come up. I've seen that lead to some system confusion and browser confusion. So I would say just go to rcview.redcross.org and then bookmark that page, and then you can always go there. Once you get there, you're going to log in with the same email address and password that you use to access Volunteer Connection. Okay, so you log in with the same credentials. And if you're having any problems accessing RC View, then we've got a document that helps you troubleshoot where you're at. And this is what the login screen looks like. Okay, and you enter that email address and password, you click sign in, and that takes you right into the system. Okay, so once you have logged in, you've got to go find the record that you're going to work with, right? And so you will, if the dispatcher called you, you will have, maybe jotted that address down somewhere. If you're getting automated notifications, you may have it on a text message, you may have it in an email, but you're going to go find that event. And that event is going to appear in one of two places. Okay, at the duty officer dashboard. So you've got a dashboard just for your work as a duty officer. There is a My DO Events tab, and that's going to list events to which a duty officer has been assigned. For those of you who are receiving automated notifications, you will be automatically assigned to the ones that you accept, so those events will appear at your My DO Events tab right away. For everyone else, you can go to the Events tab. That Events tab lists all of the region's DAT events from the last 90 days. So you can just go over there and find it. You may need to sort those events so that the newest ones are at the top. But once you do that, it should be really easy to find the event that you're currently working. And, just as an FYI, I don't think you'll need to go here often. You do have access to an Incidents tab up at the top of the RC View DAT Dispatch screen. And there you can see, a very wide range of events in the system, right? So if you need to see an event that occurred outside of your region, for example, or an event that you were not assigned to that is more than 90 days old within your region, you can go to the Incidents tab and do a search and find an event in that way. So let's go ahead and do this piece. I'm going to share again. And I need to log back in. This, by the way, this is our training environment, so the login process is a little different. It's a direct login. Your implementation lead has the info on how you guys can access this training environment. It's really set up more for DAT coordinators and regional leadership to practice scheduling than it is for you guys to do the stuff I'm going to show you tonight. Okay. So you log into the system, and then up here under the Home tab, depending on your permission level in the system, you will have a series of dashboards to choose from. I'm currently logged in as a regional leadership. Your permissions need to give you access to the duty officer dashboard. Okay, so you click the duty officer dashboard, and notice there's a My DO Events tab. These are the ones to which I've been assigned. Notice that 215 Northbrook Drive, that brand new event we just looked at, it was assigned to me, and so it's here on the My DO Events tab. But you've also got an Events tab that lists all of the events from the prior 90 days, okay? And you've got immediate action and delayed action events. And, you know, here's that 215 Northbrook Drive event. It's listed here as well. But look, here's one I'm not assigned to, okay? 3700 National Drive, also in Raleigh. So you're going to find the event either here at the Events tab. If you're using automated notifications, you might initially find it here. We're going to do stuff with the event to make it go over here to My DO event, so I'm talking at the moment about the initial finding of the event after you've been notified of it, okay? And then here's that Incidents tab I was talking about. You can come up here and go Incidents, Events, and, you know, search for events here as well. And you can find older events here and even events from other regions if you ever need to do that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my duty officer dashboard and stop sharing. And so you've gone in, you've logged into the system, you've located your event record, and you're going to go activate that DAT response, okay? As appropriate, if it's one that we need to respond to, you're going to say, will the Red Cross respond? Yes. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a second, but let's talk a little bit first about the stuff that happens in the system when you do that, because a number of things occur. So when you go in and you say that the Red Cross is going to respond, based on that same event address that we talked about before, the system's going to identify the relevant DAT schedule. Okay, it's already identified the relevant duty officer schedule. Now it's going to identify the relevant DAT schedule. And then based on that DAT schedule and, you know, who is currently on call as a DAT leader, as a DAT responder, maybe as a DAT trainee, based on some things that your DAT coordinators are doing to configure those schedules around minimum values and maximum values, it's going to generate what we call an event resources list, or an ERL, okay? And that's really just a short list of likely responders, okay? It's generally speaking, it's the people who are on call on that DAT schedule. It's a little more complex than that based on how many people are signed up and, you know, what the minimum and maximum values the DAT coordinators have set and so forth. But broadly speaking, an easy way to think about it, at least initially, is, you know, those are the people who are on call. It's a short list of likely responders for a particular event, okay? So a resource list for a single event. Now, just like duty officer schedules can be automatic or manual in terms of notification, DAT schedules have the same choice of manual or automatic. So if it happens to be an automatic DAT schedule, when you say the Red Cross will respond, the system not only creates this event resources list, it'll also start sending automated response requests to on-call DAT members. Okay, so again, depending on the schedule, it may be sending them to a subset of the on-call DAT members, but it's going to start notifying people automatically. And so for an automatic DAT schedule, you guys as duty officers, you do not determine who is initially receiving those response requests, because the system is sending those out without your telling it who to send it to. It's sending it out based on the schedule and who's currently on call. If the system starts doing that, the timing is the same as what I described for duty officer schedules, right? It'll reach out to somebody, give them 5 minutes to respond. If they don't respond, it'll reach out again and give them 5 more minutes. If they don't respond after the second 5 minutes, then it'll give them an assignment status of no response, and you'll be able to see that as a duty officer. Okay. Now, let's go back to that event resources list. We're going to spend a lot of our time today working at an event resources list. Again, a good way to think of it is a short list of likely responders. Okay. Now, the people who show up on that list are DAT members who are signed up for shifts on the relevant DAT schedule, and how many of them appear depends on how many are signed up, but also the maximum that has been established on the DAT schedule for each DAT position, because these DAT schedules have 3 positions, right? DAT leader, DAT responder, and DAT trainee. And your DAT coordinators set up a maximum for each and a minimum for each as well. So it looks at that maximum, it looks at who's currently either on call or generally available, and it lists people on this event resources list. Now, there are two types of people that might be on the DAT schedule, but that never appear on one of these event resources lists automatically. First of all, it's not going to list somebody that the system knows is already assigned to a different event. Okay, so if Joe Smith is already responding to an event on Main Street, and then a subsequent event occurs on Elm Street, and the system knows that Joe is working the event on Main Street, so it will not list him on that event resources list for the Elm Street event, even though he may be on call on that DAT schedule. Okay, so the system knows who's currently assigned to events. Also, the people are able to sign up for these DAT shifts as either on call, as generally available, or as emergency only. And the system's never going to list on an URL someone who is signed up as emergency only. Okay, you can reference the schedule and see who those people are should you need them, but that happens so rarely that the system doesn't clutter up the event resources list with people who are signed up as emergency only. Okay, so that event resources list is really important. Here's a screenshot of what one looks like. You can see it's a single event, and it's got listed a couple people. This is probably more people than would typically show up on one, but that can vary from region to region. So it's got a couple of people listed as DAT leader, 3 people listed under DAT responders, and 1 person listed under DAT trainee. Okay, so again, this is the automatically generated by the system, and if it's an automatic DAT schedule, the system starts contacting the people who appear on this list and are also signed up as on call. Okay, it doesn't automatically contact anybody who's signed up as generally available or as emergency only. Okay. An important thing to keep in mind is that you guys, as duty officers, can add DAT members to an URL as needed. You can add additional people to that list if they don't automatically appear on it. You can also add support staff, right? So you can add disaster health, disaster mental health folks, and so forth to an URL as well. And so you can do that. If there were people who were signed up on the DAT schedule as either on call or generally available, but they're not listed on the URL because they would have exceeded the maximum.
It's not you.
Yes, it is.
It's your mom's mirror.
Oh, my Urban Outfitters is supposed to come today.
Okay. So sorry, we were getting some background noise there, so I muted everybody. You'll need to use *1, please, to come off of mute. So you guys can add people to that event resources list whenever you need to. If there was anyone who was signed up as on-call or generally available, but they weren't automatically listed on that URL because they would have exceeded the maximum that the DAT coordinator set, they show up they're visible to you. From the URL, you can readily see them and choose them and get them added. There are even stars that appear that indicate if they're on call or generally available. So that part's easy. And you can even search for those that are not visible at the event resources list. You can search for anybody in your region that you want to and get them added to an event resources list. And so, here's an event resources list with the people who have been added to it. I've got the DAT leader position selected here on the event resources list. You can see 2 people in this example have been added to that event resources list. Those 2 people have check marks over here on the right. However, underneath it, you see a 3rd person is listed who doesn't have a check mark. If I wanted to add this person to the event resources list, I can just check that box. Okay, so this is someone who's either on call or generally available right now, but they weren't listed here because they would have exceeded the maximum that the DAT coordinator set up. Here's the search feature where you can go and look for anyone that you may want to add to an event resources list, regardless of whether they're already listed here. And if you scroll over here to the right at these listings of people, you will see these stars, right? And so if you see 4 stars, that means the person is on call. If you see 1 star, that means they're generally available. Okay, so that's just another way to know if somebody is on call, signed up as on call, or signed up as generally available. Okay, so I want to give you a quick sense. I've referenced these minimums and maximums a couple of times, so I want to take a really quick detour here just to give you a reference point. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend I'm a DAT coordinator for a second. I want to show you a DAT schedule. So here's the DAT schedule we'll be using in our demonstration. Okay, notice it is a manual DAT schedule, not automatic. But notice that it has these minimums and maximums set up for DAT leader, DAT responder, and DAT trainee. Okay, and for purposes of demonstration, I just set them all up for 1 because that's easy for us to remember and keep track of during class. Okay, so the minimums and maximums are set by the DAT coordinators for each of those positions. Okay, over here at the Resources tab, you can see we've got people associated with DAT leader on-call shifts, DAT leader generally available shifts, DAT responder on-call shifts and generally available shifts, and so forth. And over here at the Rostering tab, you can see we have some people rostered right now and on-call or generally available for these positions. Okay, but the thing I really want you to remember, we've got a 1 in here for minimum and maximum for DAT leader, responder, and DAT trainee, because these things affect, these maximum values determine how many people show up automatically on those event resources lists. Okay. All right, so we're going to continue on with this, but before we do, we're going to talk a little bit about the pop-ups that come up when you activate a response, and then we're going to go in and activate one. Okay, but before we do all that, are there any pending questions that anyone would like to have answered? Okay, I see one came into me just to the host, and it. Oh, go ahead, please.
I just put in a chat box the questions.
Yes. Were you the one asking if there are 2 DAT leaders on call?
Right.
Right, okay. Yeah, very good. I'm happy to answer those questions. Please send your questions in through chat to the host, presenter, and panelist, and in that way all of the panelists will see them, okay? That'll just make it, you'll probably get an answer faster that way, but please don't sweat it. That's fine. So the questions are, how does the system pick the leader if there are 2 DAT leaders on call? It will literally, if you've got 2 DAT leaders on call and the maximum that is set up at the DAT schedule is 1, it will literally look, I'm not sharing anymore, am I? It will look at the order in which they appear on the schedule, right? So in our example, you can see Derek December is listed as an on-call DAT leader. If Susan Sapphire were also currently scheduled as an on-call DAT leader, and it was going to pick a maximum of 1, it'll pick the topmost one. Okay, so it doesn't put a ton of criteria or thought into that distinction, and so it's important that the DAT coordinators schedule and set those minimums and maximums up in a way that makes sense. Okay, for what's going on in a given DAT response area or territory. And then the other question is, can the DAT responder respond before the DAT lead? Yes, we will see that in a second. If a DAT responder accepts the event response request before the DAT leader does, the system will give you a warning as a duty officer. It'll pop up a pop-up box to tell you that you've got a team member who has been assigned, but you don't yet have a DAT leader assigned. Okay, so that's something that the system allows, but it gives you a warning in that circumstance. Okay, great questions. Thank you for those. All right, am I still sharing? I am not. All right, so let's soldier on, and we'll do a DAT activation for sure before we take a break here in a little while. The other thing I want you to know about and think about in terms of these DAT activations is that when you do them, when you have worked through and finished the process, the system starts giving you pop-up messages to tell you how it's going. Okay, and some of these you'll be happy to see. Other of these you don't want to see very often. This blue one, call or event saved and updated, you're going to see a lot. Whenever you go in and make any sort of change on an event record, you will see a pop-up like this one. It's kind of benign, right? It's just telling you that a change has been made. If you go in and activate a DAT response and it's a manual DAT schedule, you'll get a message like this one. It tells you the event resources list has been created. Manual notification is required because it's a manual DAT schedule. If, on the other hand, you activated a response and it's an automatic DAT schedule, you'll get a pop-up like this one. It also tells you that the event resources list has been created, but it's also going to tell you that the automatic notifications are commencing. The next two are ones that hopefully you don't see very often, but you might run into from time to time. If you're working with automatic DAT schedules and the system goes to create that event resources list and you don't have enough people signed up for shifts to meet the minimums that the DAT coordinator set, it'll tell you. It'll say insufficient resources, and it'll tell you which position you have insufficient people signed up for. I don't think it does that for manual schedules, because when you go to look at the URL yourself, you're gonna recognize that pretty quickly. But it doesn't want you trusting the automated notifications when it knows right away that there are insufficient number of people signed up at the time. Another one that you might run into, hopefully you won't see this one because we're working really hard during the implementation to prevent it, but it will also let you know if it can't identify an active DAT schedule for the event, right? It looks at the event address and it just can't find a DAT schedule for that event location. A couple of things that could cause that, one possibility is the event address wasn't entered appropriately. Okay, and that might be why it might not have been able to geocode the address, and so it can't find the schedule. Or it may be, and this is what we're working hard to prevent, that an active DAT schedule just doesn't exist, right? Maybe somebody went in and activated a schedule and left that territory uncovered. So if you find that's the case, the address is fine, but there's no active DAT schedule, you want to please follow up with the DAT coordinator for that territory or response area to make sure everything's okay. It's not a deal breaker, though. I mean, while this is not a message you want to see, it doesn't stop the boat, right? Because the system is still going to generate an event resources list. There's just not going to be anybody listed on it. You're going to have that platform of the event resources list to start, adding people to it. I'm going to show you in a minute how you can look at the DAT schedule and figure out who you should be calling or getting in touch with. So you can continue with the activation, but you'll just be starting with a blank event resources list. Okay, so let's go ahead and let me demonstrate this piece for you, and maybe we will take a short break after this piece is done. Okay, so I'm going to perform the initial steps toward activating a DAT response on that event I've been working with so far. I don't have to enter my name in the assigned to field because I got an automated duty officer notification, but I'll show you where that is. I'm going to show you where you can record a rally point or duty officer notes. We'll look at verification information, and then we will indicate that the Red Cross will respond. Okay, so let me go ahead and share. All right, so let me go back to being a duty officer. Just go over here to My Events. And here's the event I've been working with. Let me get that guy open. I want to click the Edit button to open it up in edit mode. Scroll down a little bit. Okay. So here is that assigned to field. You may come in here if you're getting manual duty officer notifications. This other stuff the dispatcher will have filled out, but that assigned to field will be blank. You just have to come here, click the folder icon, and then search for and select yourself. All right, so I'm just going to search for Indy, Arizona. I'm going to maybe spell that correctly. I want to select, and there you go. So that's how you can assign yourself as the duty officer. That puts it on your My DO Events tab, and it helps other people see in various places in the system who the duty officer is. If you want to designate a rally point, you can. You can even geocode that rally point, and the DAT responders will see that rally point through the DAT app. They can even, because it's geocoded, they can potentially get directions to it through the app and through whatever the native GPS system that they have on their phone, whether it's Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever the case may be. You can put notes here in the duty officer notes. Here's the verification information. In this instance, because it came from a fire department, the information I recorded up here under agency got copied down here to the verification information. But if these fields were blank, I could enter verification information into them. I can indicate, who the verification came from. I can indicate, who that I took the verification information, when I obtained it, and so forth. And then a little further down is that important question, will the Red Cross respond? Okay, so to activate the event, you come here and you say yes. Okay, now it's going to ask you immediate response required. That's typically going to be yes. If it's a situation where, the client's okay for the night and they want to meet with the Red Cross in the morning, you can change that to no, but by and large, immediate response required is going to be yes. Automatic DAT dispatch required. When you're doing real-time events, you're going to just leave that at its default. If you are a territory or if you're working this event, putting this information in as part of back data entry, you're having to sort of catch up the data with something that already occurred. You can change that automatic DAT dispatch required to no, and that'll prevent from any notifications going out to responders and maybe confusing them. So typically it's going to be yes and yes. Will Red Cross respond? Immediate response required. And then you come down here and click OK. So let's see what the system does when I do that. So the screen refreshes. It kicks off workflows, right? So there's stuff going on in the background. And a couple of things should have occurred. So the system, if I go over here and I look at the DAT schedule, it knows what DAT schedule we're working with. Here's information about the people who are currently scheduled on that schedule. Notice that it's given me the saved and updated message, and it's telling me that it created an event resources list, manual notification required. So it's a manual DAT schedule. If I come over here, the event resources list has information populated. It's got a couple people listed here. It's got me a DAT leader and a DAT responder. So it has created that event resources list. Okay. This was a manual schedule, so no notifications have gone out yet to the people listed on the event resources list. If it were an automatic DAT schedule, it would go out to the people listed as on call. Okay, so why don't we, this seems like a good place to take a break. Seems like kind of a natural place to do that. We have worked our way through first steps for an activation, and next we're going to talk about next steps, what you do after you get to this point. Let's go back to our whiteboard, and let's see, it is almost 5:38, 5:39 Eastern. Let's take a solid 5 minutes so everybody can get up and leave the screen for a minute, and let's resume at, what's 5 minutes from now? Let's come back at 5:45 Eastern. Okay. 5:45 Eastern, we will resume. That'll be 15 minutes before the hour wherever you are. Please stay in the WebEx session. You're welcome to stay on the call. We'll just all go on to mute, and we will resume at 5:45 Eastern time. All right, everybody, it just turned 5:45 Eastern. I'm going to go ahead and clear our emoticons. If you are back with us, I'm just going to try to judge if we've got a quorum. If you're back with us, go ahead and click the green check mark so we know you're here. If you are back among us, click that green check mark. Perfect. So this will be a good time, I think, to get caught up with some questions while people find their way back. I would ask the panelists, are there any pending in chat that we need to address?
Hey,
You guys
Andy,
are
there are
probably,
no unanswered ones.
There are no unanswered ones in there. Okay, let me see if any are coming across.
Actually, there are two that came in while we were on break. I don't see that anybody's heard them. One says,
go ahead,
the
please.
duty officer adds notes in the duty officer notes section. Will the volunteers see that?
It is included in the initial notification out to the DAT members. So if they get a text message, for example, or an email, the duty officer notes are included in those communications.
Okay, great. And then that next one about the CAS financial auditors. You want to address that?
Okay, sure. The CAS financial auditors require a run number from the fire department. Is there a place to enter that? And is there connectivity between RC View and CAS? Okay, so there's no connectivity between RC View and CAS, but we can go look at that section of the call form again where the verification goes. Let me just go back to that part of the record. Because there are a couple fields that you can use. So for example, there is this verification source ID number, and that is a free form field. So I think you could use this to enter that run number. Okay, so that may even be the intended purpose of this field, but the verification source ID number seems like a likely field for recording that. Okay, so I hope that makes sense and works for you, because that looks like a pretty good option. Okay, so here's another one. Oh, okay, sorry, you've already answered that one. Okay, so I think we're caught up. I think we're good to go. So thank you, guys. Thanks for coming back, and thanks for those questions as well. And so let's dive back in. When we left off, we had said the Red Cross will respond.
I actually did have a question.
Oh, yes, please, go ahead, certainly.
Sure. I'm having a little bit of trouble understanding the minimum and maximum. Is there a minimum number of people allowed on the schedule in each position, and then another minimum and maximum for the number of people allowed to respond to each position? Yeah,
I mean, I can give it to you. I can give you a quick high-level gloss on it. We go into a lot of detail in the DAT coordinator training.
Yeah.
But there are two sets of minimums and maximums. The set that's most important to you guys. Crazy. No, you're not crazy at all. No, you're wholly sane on this. The minimum and maximum that matters most to you guys is the one that appears at the details tab of the DAT schedule, because that determines the maximum determines the number of people that are automatically added to that event resources list, right? Regardless of how many people are signed up, it's not going to list initially on that list more than the maximum for each position. Okay, you can add more as you like, right? But the initial listing is only going to be up to that maximum. For territories that are using automatic DAT schedules, that maximum also determines the number of on-call people who would receive an automatic notification. Okay, so it won't automatically call out to beyond that maximum. The minimum, on the other hand, is the That's the number that the system is expecting to be assigned for each position. Okay, and so if you're going to have more than that minimum assigned to an event resources list and not really assigned, but assigned to the event resources list and assigned to the event, you as a duty officer have to take one of two types of manual interventions, and we're going to show you those in just a minute. Okay, so that's the minimum and maximum that's most important to you guys. There's a separate minimum resources and maximum resources field for each position and availability listing, and those are relevant just to scheduling. Okay, it helps DAT coordinators tell at a glance if they have gaps in their schedule. And those maximum resources do limit the number of people who can self-register for a given shift. Right, so you could, you know, if you don't want 8 people signed up at the same time as that leader on call, there is a field that can prevent that from a self-registration standpoint. So it's probably a little vague, but hopefully it helps a little bit. And as somebody astutely pointed out in the chat, we do have a video just on that topic, and there's the link to the YouTube video in the chat as well. Does that help at all? Okay. I'm going to trust it did.
I muted myself again, sorry.
Okay, perfect. No problem at all. Okay. All right, so this is where we left off. So we've done that work, and now we've got to start taking the next steps, right? So we said the Red Cross will respond. The system has done some stuff. And now we as duty officers have more work to do. And what we do next depends entirely on whether or not it's an automatic or manual DAT schedule. If it's an automatic DAT schedule, then you as a duty officer, you begin the monitoring process. And we're going to cover monitoring as we go and in a little more detail later. But basically, you're watching to see, did those responders, did those DAT members to whom the system automatically sent response requests, what are they saying? Are they saying, yes, I can help? Or are they not responding or saying, no, I can't help? Okay, so you immediately go into monitoring mode if it's an automatic schedule. If it's a manual DAT schedule, you have to begin the work of notifying people that they need to respond. Okay, and so that's important. And then, and you've got an if-then right out of the gate, right? Am I working with an automatic DAT schedule or a manual DAT schedule? And the good news is that right at that event resources list tab of the event record, it tells you right up there at the top row, is it a manual or automatic record or DAT schedule? So you ascertain that right away just by looking at the event resources list tab. It tells you right up there at the top of the screen. And so you can immediately determine it's an automatic or manual schedule. If it's a manual schedule, you guys have two options for alerting your DAT members and seeing if they're able to respond. Okay, one way that you can do it is you can go completely outside of the system, kind of wholly manual, right? You can reference their contact information, give them a call, shoot them a text. The other option you have is that you can tell the system, I want you to send automated notifications to these people that I designate. Okay, so remember with the fully automatic DAT schedule, I told you that you, the duty officer, have no control over who is initially notified about a response. The option that I'm telling you here, one of your manual options, is you can send automated notifications, but you can determine who receives them. Okay, so that's the other option. You may have heard this referred to in the orientations as the semi-automatic option. And we also have a video on these different ways to activate a response as well. Okay. So just a quick sort of comparison of the two different ways of manually notifying people. Okay, if you're going to prompt the system to send those automated response requests, you get some advantages out of that. For starters, you can simultaneously send requests to multiple people. You can say, I want to send these requests to, 3 people at a time, 4 people at a time, whatever you want to do. DAT members are going to get these response requests per their notification preferences, okay, which can be nice for them. and the system's going to automatically update whether they respond, and if they respond, did they say yes or no. The system's going to capture that automatically. Okay, and so that's all to the good. One thing, though, is if you are using this option, you do want to know what the minimum is for each of those positions. Okay, and I'm going to show you where you can ascertain that at the event resources list. The reason that matters is, again, the system thinks that minimum is the number of people you're expecting and all the people you need to respond. So if the minimum for that responder is 1, and you send automated notifications out to 2 DAT responders, okay, and the first person says, yes, I can respond, and the system's like, okay, great, we've got everybody we need. If that second person then subsequently says, yes, I can respond, the system tells them, request canceled. Okay, we don't really need you because we've got somebody else already doing that job. So if you're going to use the option of manually telling the system to send response requests out, then you need to know about those minimums and try to manage that so that maybe too many people aren't getting those request canceled assignment statuses and notifications. You can, when needed, increase that minimum, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, it's just something you got to be aware of. On the other hand, if you're calling or texting outside of the system, right, you're just doing wholly manual notifications, there are some advantages there as well, right? A, you get to talk to people directly, which can be important and good. You are restricted to do one at a time, right, as opposed to being able to do simultaneous notifications. And you do need to record in the system, did they respond, and if so, what did they say? Okay, so instead of the system doing that for you automatically, you need to do that. So you guys will, figure it out, which of these works for you. I know maybe in some territories you will decide together how you're going to approach this. But you guys, as duty officers, these are the 2 options you have for manual DAT schedules to let people know that they're needed. Okay, so let's take a look at this, and so you can get a sense of how this goes. So I'm going to share again. And I am in this event record, so I'm just going to go ahead. I had it in edit mode, so let me just stop that. And I'm going to kick over here to the event resources list tab. Okay, so first of all, first thing I want you to notice is here's that notification type. So I know I'm dealing with manual notifications. I'm just going to ease up on the background. Okay, so you will need to use *1 to ask questions. So here's where you can see if it's automatic or manual. This one is manual, as you can see. Notice I've got some folks listed here. I've got their contact information listed here. I can also open up the event resources list, and I can see that people have been assigned to it. Notice there was 1 person assigned for each. That was our maximum. I wouldn't expect more than that to occur. Now, how do I know what the minimum is for each of these positions? Notice that it lists the position, then you've got a number, a slash, and another number. The number to the right of the slash is the minimum. Remember, they were all set up for 1, DAT leader, DAT responder, DAT trainee. You've got 1, 1, and 1. Okay, for leader, responder, and trainee. If my minimum for DAT responder were 2, this would say 2 instead. So that's how you can ascertain manual versus automatic. That's how you can ascertain what your minimums are. So, okay, now I'm ready to start notifying people and sending them response requests. You've got 2 options to do that. Okay, one is...
Can I ask you a question about the minimums?
Sure, yeah, please.
So you're saying that 1 is the minimum for a position, but isn't it really 1's the maximum? Because you're saying after one signs in, nobody else can sign in. That sounds like a maximum to me, not a minimum.
Yeah, I hear you. That's confusing, but that's the way it is. The maximum is the maximum number of people listed on the URL, right? It's the maximum number of people who are going to receive automated notifications. But the minimum is you're right, kind of the maximum number of people the system is expecting to be assigned to the event.
I have a question.
Okay, please.
And you have a question. Currently, all we're required to do is notify the DAT leader, and the DAT leader notifies the responders and trainees. Are you saying now in the new system, the duty officer has to notify everyone?
Yes, that is the model with this system, is that the duty officer is activating the entire team, okay, and monitoring the entire team's progression through the event response. Okay, and how that works from, duty officer to DAT leader and all that, that is really a program question for the DAT program more than for this implementation, but it is an assumption of the system. It's an assumption built into the process, is that the duty officer is activating the entire team. And Anna, is there anything else to say on that, you think? And Anna, you might need to star 1 to come off of mute. Okay, so Anna's not coming off of mute. Maybe she'll come off later. But that's definitely an assumption for the system and the process. Okay, so let's get these folks activated. So you've got 2 ways to do this. One is the automated, tell the system to whom you would like to send automated notifications. So I want to do that for Derek. You can check as many boxes as you want when you do this. So you can send notifications out to multiple people at once. So I've got Derek checked. I'm going to say I want to activate him. For the workflow, I'm going to choose send that request. Oops. I'm going to choose send that request. And then I'm going to click apply. And just like that, the system is, sending an automated DAT notification, an automated response request out to Derek, and he will get it per his notification preferences, right? Email and or text and or voice notification. Notice his little icon turned yellow. That means he's got a pending automated response request that's been tossed his way. The other thing that you can do is you can go directly to someone's listing, and let's say this is a wholly manual process, and I've communicated with Anna, and she's told me yes, she would like to respond. I can go to her record. I can say she's assigned. I can choose an assigned timestamp, and come down here and click OK. So that's the wholly manual process, right? I've talked to her. If I do that, I need to record that she is assigned and choose the assigned timestamp. Okay, so if Derek accepts that notification, we will go ahead.
How do you add people if you want to add people to the list?
Oh, we'll get there. We'll get there. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. All right. I'll let you know then.
No. That's a great question. You're anticipating where we're going, which is great. But to a question that came up earlier about what happens if we get a responder out ahead of a DAT leader, notice this little this little pop-up came up. DAT member assigned, but no DAT leader yet found. Okay, so it's telling me that we've got a responder out there, but we don't yet have a leader. Okay, so we've got a situation here. Somebody wants to see that semi-automatic option again. We've got a situation here where I've got a DAT leader. I'm waiting to see if the DAT leader can go. I've got a DAT responder already set up and ready to go. Notice she's green. She's assigned. She's all set. What I'm going to do now is get a DAT trainee set up. But notice that on the URL, oh, wait a minute. Now Derek has accepted. Okay, so he accepted his notification. So he's in. Notice that he's green. And I got a pop-up, so I know he's good to go. But it's also telling me my minimum number of resources are not confirmed. Okay, because remember our minimum was 1, 1, and 1, right? And I've got my one. Let me finish this. Yeah, let me finish this thought, and I'll happily take your question. I've got my one DAT leader. I've got my 1 DAT responder. I don't have my 1 DAT trainee, so I haven't met my minimum. So that's why the system's telling me I'm yet to hit my minimum. Okay, go ahead, please, with your question.
So when the DAT is in this example, Anna was assigned and ready to respond, and Derek has not responded before, does this mean Anna is already on her way to the site, or does Anna need to be notified that, okay, now the leader is assigned so you can move forward?
Yeah, it's not, there's nothing, if Anna's told me she's assigned, if Anna's assigned and Derek is not yet assigned, then I know I've got a situation where, I've got a responder who has said they could go, and, they may be going to the scene now, and so I need to work and make sure I get a DAT leader out there. The other thing is that the responders can see through the app who all they are responding with, and so they can go in there and see if they have a full team or not. You guys can build, if you have a rally point set up for an event, you can have the people go there, and then they don't leave the rally point to go to the event location itself until everybody's there. Okay, so there's, you guys can build your processes, but the system will tell you if you've got a responder and or a trainee who's assigned, but you don't yet have a DAT leader assigned.
Now, how would I notify Anna to go pick up a DRV to the scene?
You would know, you can notify, you can communicate with people the same way you communicate with them today, right? There's using the system doesn't prevent you from calling or texting someone, right?
But it doesn't automatically, it says ask response rate on the screen, but it doesn't do anything with it.
Okay, I'm not understanding your question. Could you say that one more time for me?
On your screen here on the left-hand side, right at the bottom, I see an ask response vehicle. And I'm wondering how that gets assigned.
Oh, the ARC response vehicle? Oh, I'll show you how to do that. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Absolutely.
I have a question.
We just haven't got there yet to the vehicle. I'm sorry, I wasn't hearing you. I apologize. Yes, ma'am. What's your question?
If a DAT responder responds but a DAT leader does not, then what do you do? Just send out a trainee?
No, that is a program question as to who responds and what the guidance is from the program around sending people out without a DAT leader. So that's really I'm not comfortable answering that question. That's more about standards and policies. This is just the system can tell you who has and has not accepted their assignment, and it gives you a pop-up if you have people who have accepted the assignment, but without a DAT leader having done so.
Okay.
Okay? All right. All right. So I've got a DAT leader assigned. I've got a DAT responder assigned. I don't yet have a DAT trainee assigned. Okay? And somebody was asking earlier about how do you add somebody. So I can come down here to the DAT trainee listing on the event resources list. And it's, nobody is there. There was no plus sign. There's nobody listed here. So how can I get somebody added to this? In a moment like this, it might help to consult the DAT schedule, right? And the DAT schedule for each event is listed on a tab, but it may help you to be able to see the schedule while you've got your event resources list open. So kind of a trick of the trade is you can, duplicate this tab. You do it differently on different browsers. But I just duplicated that tab. It opened another one for me. I'm just going to go open the event over here in this other tab. And I'm going to go to the DAT schedule instead. Okay? And I can bring this DAT schedule up and I can look at it. And I can at least see, even though there aren't currently any trainees on call or anything, I can see that Wally, Wyoming, he's not currently scheduled, but he is a DAT trainee, so maybe that's the guy I want to try to contact, right? And so I can come over here, I can search for Wally, Wyoming, And when he comes up, I can add him to the event resources list just like that. And then once he's added, then I've still got to activate him one way or another, right? And so I can follow the process. Somebody was saying they wanted to see the automated, that sort of semi-manual option again. You just check the box. You go up here to activate. You say that you want to send a DAT request. You click apply. Okay, and so that automatically fires the notification out. So that's how you can do that piece. Now, Wally's not going to be as on the spot as Derek, so I'm not expecting Wally to reply. Wally's not a real person. So, you can, in a circumstance like that, and just to keep the ball rolling for us, I'm just going to mark that Wally's going to respond.
Question.
Yes, sir.
You can only pick Wally if he's got general availability, right? Because he wasn't on call. You're going to pick.
That's okay.
You're going to pick people who are not on call and do not have general available.
Well, it depends on what you're doing. It depends on your situation, right? So, I mean, you're going to look at that schedule, and hopefully when you look at the schedule, you've got some people listed as generally available or maybe even emergency only. I was just demonstrating for you the process for how you can go in and search for anybody that's in the system and get them added to an event resources list.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I agree. And when you come over here to the schedule, you're going to want to see some people listed. He was not scheduled at the moment, but I know he's a trainee, so I know he might have some interest. So I'm reaching out to him. But
okay.
Ideally, you're going to have more people to choose from for sure.
Yep. In some areas you won't, though. But.
Yeah, well, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
So that's how you can go in and add people to the URL, and you've got those two options for getting them notified. Now notice over here with Derek December, oh, hang on, thought I saw a pop-up that dude was on scene. Somebody's on scene. Oh, it's Anna. Okay, my fault. Anna Alaska has indicated that she is on scene. So your DAT responders, once you get them assigned, they have multiple ways that they can indicate that they are on scene. Okay, they can either, if they're using the mobile app, they can go into the app, and when they get on scene, there's just a button they can tap to indicate that they're on scene. So that's one way to indicate that you're on scene. However, when someone indicates that they're assigned, if they're set up to receive in their notification preferences, if they're set up to receive text messages and emails, they will get a notification that says, hey, you've been assigned, reply a certain way when you show up on scene. And so then that person can arrive on scene, they can pull out their phone, they can text back whatever that code is and say, hey, now I'm on scene. Okay, and at that point, the system will send them a notification that says, hey, you're on scene. Text to this to let us know when you're off scene. So there are multiple ways that they can let you know when they are and are not on scene. Okay, and you can also manually indicate that. So we've got our guy Wally over here who currently has a status of requested. I think I can get him assigned. I think I made him assigned before he even had a status of requested. We've got our guy Wally over here. Okay, hopefully he's assigned now. Derek up here, he is on scene as well. Okay, and you can, when needed, indicate for someone that they are on scene. So if Wally is in communication with me via phone, or maybe my leader has told me, hey, Wally just arrived, I can make a manual indicator that someone is on scene, and notice the system is now telling me I got my minimum number of resources confirmed. So you're working here at the event resources list. A couple of other things that you can do. You've got these support roles. Notice that we've got Arnold, Alabama, and he showed up because he is currently scheduled for disaster health services. The support roles are a little different, okay, in that they aren't even if someone is scheduled, they are not automatically put on the event resources list because we don't always need the people in these various support roles. But you can, just like with the DAT members, you can go to one of the support positions. If somebody's scheduled, they show right up here for selection. And now I know that Arnold is pitching in with Disaster Health Services on this event response, okay? I would have had to have called him, of course, and communicated with him. We don't track, their assignment statuses. We don't track when they're on scene and off scene, but you can note who comes to support an event in a support role. And we had the question earlier about the response vehicles. You can click on that response vehicle link. It is up to the regional leadership folks at your region, the people with those permissions in the system, to establish vehicle records. But they can go in, they can set up vehicle records. Those vehicle records have options to indicate if a given vehicle is in service or out of service, and if it's available to the DAT program or not available to the DAT program. And the system knows which vehicles are and are not already assigned to an event, right? And so when you come here and you click on that ARC response vehicle listing, regional vehicles will be listed here, assuming that they're not already assigned to another event, assuming that they're in service, and assuming that they're available to the DAT program. And to get one added, you just check the box, right? And so that's how you indicate that a vehicle is associated with the event response. And, that vehicle and these DAT members, the system knows they're all associated with this event response, and so they're not available to other event responses until this response ends, okay, until this response goes to a status of off scene. Okay. So we just burnt through a lot of what we need to talk about. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah. You assign the vehicle, but the vehicle doesn't drive by itself.
I apologize. I didn't catch that. Could you ask it again, please?
Okay. So we assign the vehicle, and I'm sitting, as a DO sitting here at my home, and I assign the vehicle to an event, but it doesn't drive by itself, does it? So how do I let Anna know? Can Anna, when she's responding, she said, okay, I'll go pick up a demo vehicle, I'll pick up a vehicle, or
you will have to manage. I understand your question. Yeah, you have to manage that outside of the system, right? There's no way in the system to say to connect a particular responder to the vehicle. Okay, I think it's probably more likely you'll follow whatever your standard processes are, and they will probably tell you which one they picked, and then you can go reflect that in the system. And managing the, indicating that the vehicles are assigned is wholly optional. It's something you guys are welcome to do. It's certainly not a requirement, but it is an option that you can use in the system.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, no, you're welcome. Gotcha. I'm with you now. Okay, so let's go back to the slides, because we just went through a lot of stuff. I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything here. Okay, we've looked at monitoring the response requests, right? We'll look at that in a little more depth. I mean, unless you're talking directly to the DAT responders, right, you're using the wholly manual option. You're monitoring whether or not they can go, and there are actually a number of places that can tell you if they're going or not. You've also got pop-ups to help you in this situation as well. So at that Event Resources List tab, you've got the people listed on the event on the URL, an assignment status, so you can look there to see if their assignment status is turned to assigned. That's kind of a good high-level place to look. Over here, you've got automatic DAT response logs that tell you on a transaction-by-transaction basis you know, who has responded and how they have responded. Did they respond via text? Did they talk directly to someone? So we'll take a look at that. It's a great place to look for this as well. You can open up the event resources list itself. You've got the color coding that we've seen. If the person is colored gray, we have not sent them an automated response request yet. If it's yellow, like we saw with Derek there for a minute, the response request has been sent out, but the person has not yet responded. If it's red, that means either they've said no, or they didn't respond in time, or within those 2 5-minute windows of time. And if it's green, that means they're assigned. They're assigned to the event. So that's another place that you can look. And of course, if you choose somebody's listing on the event resources list, you can check out their assignment status there as well. We've also got, well, let's go look at that really quickly here. So on my event, I'm actually going to go back to the event resources list tab. Let me just open this guy back up. So over here at the event resources list tab, I can see who's assigned right here by just looking down here, because they give me their assignment statuses. You can also see responder status here. You can see everybody's already on scene. Over here at the response logs, you can see that the system sent a request to Derek December, and then he replied in such a way that he became assigned, and he did that via text. Here, Anna Alaska, I assigned her manually. You can see that was assigned via the duty officer, okay? System requested Wally, Wyoming. He never responded, right? So I went ahead and assigned him manually. You can see that Wally, Wyoming was marked on scene by me, the duty officer. Derek indicated he was on scene via text, and Anna indicated that she was on scene via text. You can also, of course, as you guys have already seen in here at the event resources list, if you click on somebody, you can see their assignment status here and their responder status down here. Okay, so you got lots of ways to monitor that stuff. The pop-ups that you want to keep an eye out for, this one is telling you that you don't yet have your minimum number of resources met, okay? This one's telling you that you've got a responder or a trainee assigned, but you don't yet have a DAT leader assigned. This one's telling you, hey, good news, your minimum number is assigned. This one's telling you that a DAT leader has been assigned. This one only pops up for automated notifications. If you manually assign a DAT leader, you already know a DAT leader is assigned, so it doesn't give you a pop-up on that. Here's one I hope you don't see. This is telling you that the system tried to send a response request out to someone, but they don't have their notification preferences set. So they haven't gone into the app and said, you know, I want to get notified via, you know, text, email, and or voice. And so hopefully you won't see this orange pop up very often, but there it is just in case. And we've already talked about this whole bit about how they can indicate where they're on scene. So that's great. One additional thing I want you guys to keep in mind is that circumstance where you need more people than the schedule was expecting based on its minimums, right? So you need more than one, in this example, more than one DAT responder for an event. And you guys bear with me for just a second. They are doing some vacuuming nearby, so if it gets too close, I'll go on mute for just a minute. So if you need to activate more than the designated minimum for a position, you've got two choices, right? If you follow the wholly manual process, right, of contacting the person outside of the system and then recording the results of that communication, that's all you need to do. You don't need to worry about messing with the minimum value at all. So if you're going wholly manual, you don't need to worry about being higher than the minimum. If you're going to send an automated response request, you do need to raise the minimum for that position first, right? Because otherwise, they're going to get that request canceled as soon as they say yes. So there is a way to raise that minimum, and I'm going to show you how to do these things now. Okay, so here I am. I'm at this same event that we've been working. We have a minimum of 1 for DAT responder. Again, that's the number to the right of the slash. But I'm learning from the DAT leader that we need more people, okay? And we actually need 3 different DAT responders. So we need 2 more DAT responders to work this one. So I'm going to go here. I've got 2 options, right? My first option is if I'm going to contact somebody else, and I'm going to contact them outside of the system, I can get them added to the URL, and I can just change their status to assigned. Well, look at this. Here's Clara, Connecticut, okay? And she's visible here at the URL, but she wasn't added to it. Our minimum was 1. She wasn't listed. I look over here at the stars. She's generally available. Okay, that's what the 1 star means, generally available. 4 means on call. I don't know what 5 means. Maybe that means you're on call and fast. I don't know. But 1 means she's generally available. So I'm going to, add Clara to the event resources list. I'm going to call her up, communicate with her. Clara says, you know what, I can go. Okay, so I can mark her as assigned. And that takes care of that. Okay, so you can, that is one of the couple of ways. I thought I pressed OK. Got in too big of a hurry. That is one of the 2 ways that you can get north of that minimum value. You can go wholly manual, and that's just fine. The other option, if you want to send to that person an automated response request, right? You want to follow that semi-automatic process for that person. Before I do that, I want to increase the minimum. Okay, so now I need to increase the minimum to 3 if I'm going to add a 3rd person through the automated request. To do that piece, I just click the value for the position. I come over here, click Details, and here you can see it says Minimum Resources. I'm just going to change that to 3. Okay, so I'm getting another message down here. I click OK. Now I've told the system that I want to up that minimum value to 3. Now, you might expect this number to the right of the hash mark to change to 3, but it doesn't. Okay, but you've changed it here and you saved, so you're good. Okay, it knows that the minimum is 3. At this point, I could add yet another person, and if I wanted to, I could send them an automated request. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and add somebody else here. I'm going to do a search. Maybe you consulted the schedule, maybe just from your experience, you know that this is a good opportunity for Olivia October. Maybe I can type. Oh, wait a minute. I need to go to the list. Not bad. There's Olivia October. I can get her added to the list. And then I can send her an automated thing. And should she say yes, if she should say yes, at that point, we will have met our new minimum of 3. Okay? So that's how you can get north of that, get above the minimum value for a given position. So, as a duty officer, it's just going to be a good idea to keep half an eye on those minimums as you do your work and you decide how you want to notify people. All right. So, great. We've seen how to add additional people. We've seen how to look at the DAT schedule in a separate tab. We've added support role people. We've assigned people. We've assigned a vehicle, so good for us. We've done a lot of monitoring of people's assignment statuses. You can also, of course, look for people's responder statuses. There's the concept of an event status as well, and you can also view the DAT notes that people send while they're out in the field using the app. Sure you can, of course.
Okay, can we go back to where you were sharing your screen to go north of what the requirement is?
Sure.
Okay. I realize that this is a demo.
Mm-hmm.
in real time, will that list have everybody that's in that territory that this event is in?
No. This list is a list where the system looks at the event address. It knows what DAT schedule, right? It goes and looks at the DAT schedule. It determines who's currently on call or generally available, right? And it lists those people here up to, for each position, up to the maximum established for that schedule.
I understand that, but if we have to go off who is signed in and look for 3 more people, it's a big fire.
Yeah, if you need to look for 3 more people, I would recommend going to your DAT schedule, okay? And you could go over to the DAT schedule, and you could see you might have some people listed as emergency only. You might have, if you have more people currently on call or generally available and in those shifts, right, they'll appear over here but not checked, like we saw before with when we saw Clara, Connecticut listed over there, right? She was signed up. She would have just transcended the maximum, so she doesn't have a checkbox. Same thing here with Susan Sapphire. Susan is signed up right now as generally available. It's just that she would have been more than the minimum, so she wasn't automatically added. I can just check the box to add her.
I get that.
Okay.
Last night I was on call as a duty officer, and I had a fire with, I don't remember now, it was 8 or 16 units, about 30 people.
Yep.
Now, I had people signed in who weren't answering their phone, so I had to go off any list of anyone that was signed in and look for other people. So you're saying that this list will not show those people?
It's not going to show it's only going to show that this list will not, right, based on what we just talked about. You can go look at the DAT schedule itself and see anybody who is listed on that schedule, even though they may not be signed up right now.
That's not my question.
I don't understand your question then. Yeah. I mean,
I'm asking if there's any record of people that are not signed in but are in that territory.
Okay, only if they're associated with the schedule somehow, right?
Okay.
So if you look down here at Victor, Vermont, right, he's not signed up for anything, but he's been associated, he's been listed as a potential DAT responder on call for this schedule. So this, this could be your bench, right? The people who are known to be associated with the schedule in particular positions and particular availability listings, but they're just not available or signed up for a shift right now. But you can certainly come here and see anybody who's been associated with the schedule.
So that bench would show me somebody that was associated last week, Monday.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be listed here. You have to be listed here on the DAT schedule to even sign up for one of these shifts. Or to even have a DAT coordinator assign you. Yeah. Sorry, it took me a minute to get where your question was. That was my fault, but I'm with you now.
I have a related question.
Okay.
We're in Southeast Georgia, and we have counties that only have 2 or 3 people in them. Sometimes we have to go to totally different zip codes to get people. How do we do that with this system?
Well, you've got, if those people are associated with the schedule, then everything we just talked about applies, right? So you can see them if they're associated with the schedule. If they're not associated with the schedule, but you know who they are, you can search for anybody up here. You can add anybody to this URL from across your region if you just know their name. Right, so you can search up here and add anybody, even if they're not from this particular DAT response area or DAT territory. Okay, so you would have a decision to make. Is this person from a neighboring territory, Or do you have to contact them often enough that maybe you need to list them on the schedule? And if not, do you need to make sure all your duty officers know who they are so that if certain circumstances, they know they can go look for them up here?
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. This could be a problem for us, though. But that's okay. Go ahead. I don't want to interrupt everything. That's a local problem.
Yeah. We can work that through in office hours and stuff. But I think there's a way to get there. Okay. Awesome. Great questions, guys. I'm keeping an eye on the clock. We're about to get tight, so I'm gonna have to pick it up just a little. So hang in there with me. You guys have seen ways to monitor on scene and off scene. We'll look at that again in just a second. But there's also the concept of an event status. We've talked a lot about statuses relevant to responders, right? What's their assignment status? Are they assigned? Did they not reply? Did they say no? We've talked about their responder status. Are they on scene or off scene? But there's also the idea of an event status. And when these events get created and the dispatcher says that the Red Cross will respond, they get a status of, not will Red Cross respond, Red Cross action required, it gets a status of dispatch. As soon as a duty officer is identified and a positive contact date and time is entered, it gets a status of requested. As soon as all the minimums are met for each position, it gets a status of assigned. As soon as one person arrives on scene, it gets a status of on scene. And when everybody is off scene, it gets a status of off scene. And that's the final status that it gets, and that releases everybody in the vehicle to potentially be available for a subsequent event. If you guys, as duty officers, cancel an event, if you ever need to do that, then it gets a status of event canceled. That has the same effect as off scene, right? Everybody is released. And there are a number of places where you can see these event statuses as well. So one other thing to know about event statuses, if you have an event that's failing to move from requested to assigned, just like I showed you how you can raise a minimum for a position at an event resources list, you can also lower it, right? So if you've got a 1, 1, and 1, so you're expecting a DAT trainee for every response, and then you have a response where you don't get a DAT trainee, at the event resources list, you can change that 1 to a 0, okay? And then the event will go to minimum based on having met the minimum for the DAT leader and the DAT responder. The other thing that can happen, and this actually happened with our event tonight, is you may have not met your minimum yet, so across all positions, so the event has not yet moved to a status of assigned, but somebody's already said they're on scene, so it just goes straight to on scene. Okay, it might skip assigned under those circumstances. So let me show you really quickly where some of this monitoring can occur. So again, if we go back to the event resources list tab, it's a great source of high-level info. Here you've got that information, and you've also seen over and over at a particular person's record at the event resources list, it'll also tell you, what their responder status is. Okay, and you guys can, as you saw, set their responder statuses when you need to. The other thing I would show you, let me see if I can just go back. I think here we go. The other thing I can show you is in terms of the event status, probably the easiest place to see that is here at the event tracking. Here at the event tracking tab, you can see you've got on scene. That's the best place to see the event status. It's also visible with the dispatch tab if you happen to be over there. You have to scroll down to see it, but the event status is listed here as well. But to get it in kind of bold Technicolor, you can go to event tracking and you can see it there quite readily. Okay, so that's a lot of the monitoring piece. Yep, we've done that. You can also, if your folks are entering notes through the DAT app, you can see that. There is an Events Notes tab, just like there's a DAT Schedule tab, an Event Resources List tab. You can go to Event Notes. There's a DAT dispatcher notes section, and that's where you can see any notes that the DAT members are recording through the app. So you can go there and see that. A couple of other things you might need to do. You might need to enter somebody's responder status. You've seen me do that. I'll walk you through a couple of these other things that you might need to do, including overriding an event status, and then I'll show you how to create an event at the very end of class, okay? So recording a status, we've already talked about that. You can go in and indicate that somebody's on scene or off scene. You've seen me do that. Here's something you may need to do from time to time, which is override the current event status. Now, it has to have reached a status of assigned to have this option available to you, but you can go in and indicate that an event has reached on scene or off scene. And the circumstance here might be that, people haven't been individually updating that they're on scene, but you're in communication with the DAT leader, and the DAT leader says, hey, FYI, we're all here now. And so you can go in and set the event status to on scene. Or they're telling you we're all pulling off right now from the location. You can go in and set the event status to off scene. If you choose to set it to on scene, that does not update the responder statuses of the individuals. It does update the event status. If you set it to off scene, it changes everybody's event status to off scene. Okay? It doesn't send a notification to them under those circumstances, but it does set the event to off scene and sets all of their statuses to off scene. Okay. So let's do that. Let me share. So we're still here with the event that we've been working on at 215 Northbrook Drive. And I'm going to go check out the event resources list quickly. We can see, take a look at that. Clara, Connecticut, she is off scene. She's gone. Olivia, we haven't really heard from, but we do have Wally is on scene, Derek is on scene, and Anna is on scene. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this event record. I'm going to open it up. Now I'm going to scroll down a ways. And notice I've got the event status override available to me. Okay, and I'm going to say, you know what? Everybody's told me they're leaving the scene, so I'm going to change this status to off scene. I do have to record a date and time. If I do that, click OK. And now what should happen, I do need, sometimes I get a little ahead of the system. I need to let the workflows run. But if I go over here to event tracking, okay, you can see that this has gone to off scene at the event status. If I go over here to the event resources list, everybody's off scene. Okay, Olivia, she never responded. She was never even assigned. But everybody else is off scene. So that's how you can do that piece. If you ever need to cancel an event, and there's probably not a ton of opportunity to do that, but you can imagine a situation where, initial indicators are that we should respond, but then maybe the fire department calls back and says, you know what, we really don't need you out there after all. You can cancel an event. Let me just go in here and be a duty officer. And let me bring up one of these other events. And I can just bring up this event, for example. And if I need to cancel an event, I can simply open it up. Scroll down near
You're
the
not
bottom.
sharing.
I'm sorry?
You're not sharing the screen.
Oh, I'm not sharing. Oh, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Okay, I just opened the event up. This is a different event. Okay, it's a different address. We're on Wake Forest Road now. If I go down to the bottom, there is a cancel event option. I say yes. I do need to record a date and time. Click OK. And that cancels the event and changes the event status to event cancel. Okay. So now one heads up on that. I don't think you will often run into the circumstance where you're canceling an event after you have people assigned to it. But if you cancel an event to which people was assigned, it changes their status to off scene, but it doesn't tell them about it. Okay, it doesn't send them any sort of automated notification. So if you're going to cancel an event and there are people assigned, please be sure to communicate with those people to let them know that that one is no longer in play. Okay, that is a canceled event that they no longer need to respond to. The last thing I'll show you before we finish up by creating a new event is if you ever need to hand an event off to somebody, you can. Okay, so if you say you're working an event, I'll bring up this Navajo Drive event here. Say you're working on an event, it's yours, you're the duty officer for it, but now your shift is coming to an end and you need to give it to somebody else. Okay, how do you do that? It's all about this assigned to tab down here, right? So this one might be initially assigned to me. Okay, if I need to assign it to somebody else, I just come up here and say, okay, I'm done with this one. We've got a new duty officer who's in play for this. And now I got to hand this thing off to Susan Sapphire. That's all you've got to do. And then the effect of this is now it will show up, once I click OK, now it will show up on her My Events tab, My DO Events tab, instead of mine. Okay, and it'll also be listed if I go, if regional leadership, for example, is looking at these events, that one's going to show up with Susan Sapphire as the duty officer instead of me. Okay, so it'll be on her My DO Events tab, and it's listed here with her as the duty officer instead of me. So I've now effectively handed that off to her. Okay, so that's a lot of info. We've got one more thing to look at. It sounds more daunting than it is, which is creating the event record. But now we've talked through a great deal of, how you get notified of an event, the different ways you might get notified. If your region decides to pursue automated notifications, how you can be sure to manage those well. We've talked about how you can activate a DAT response, and then some of the monitoring and support things you do along the way, right, to include adding additional people, perhaps changing the minimum, different ways that you can notify people and see if they're able to respond, how to cancel an event, how to hand it off to somebody else, just lots of options that you've got while you're supporting these event responses. The last thing we're going to talk about is that other bottom half of the flow chart, which is that deal where you guys as duty officers get a call directly. Okay, and so maybe the fire department calls you, maybe the client calls you, maybe they call the chapter and somebody transfers the caller to you. Okay, and in these circumstances, you will be going into the system and entering the event record. Okay. There is a call form that you use. It's, it takes, like all things, you'll get used to it as you use it a little bit. Many of the fields are fairly self-evident. There are a few things, though, that you want to keep in mind if you're new to that call form. One is the required fields have an orange border around them, right? So that's how you know it's a required field for saving. The form is dynamic. Okay, so the option or the value that you choose at one field may cause other fields to display. We don't want to create duplicates for the same event, right? If somebody calls back regarding an event that's already in the system, we want to be sure we don't risk treating that as a new event, unless, of course, something else has happened there that requires additional response. We want to be careful with the event address, right, because we want to be sure it geocodes. And the other thing is, as you guys go through and do this as duty officers, you know, the system is going to say Red Cross action required, and you say yes if it's an event. And then it's going to assume it's a national dispatch. But if if you're the one entering the event record, you're going to want to change national to region, because that's telling the system, you know, this is something that I, the duty officer, am entering, so we don't need to activate any duty officers, right? So if you've got an automated duty officer schedule, it won't kick off that notification process if you choose region here. It also tells national dispatch they don't have to do any sort of manual call down to identify a duty officer for that event, okay? The other thing you want to keep in mind is you want to save at the appropriate times, and I will speak to that as we do the demonstration, okay? So let me show you what this looks like. So when you're in here working as a duty officer, you're going to work primarily at the Events tab and the MyDO Events tab. Notice both of them have this big old new call window. You just click that window. I'm sorry, button. You just click that button, and it launches a separate window for you to complete the call form. And what you're going to do is you're going to come in here and you're going to start entering the information per the caller, per the person you're talking to. And so the person I'm talking to is Francis Fire Department. Is this person's name? Francis's phone number is 919-555-6611. The address where this occurred is 3055 Medland Drive, and this is where, watch what I do here, because this is the making sure it geocodes. So I'm putting the address in here. And pretty soon the system starts recognizing that address, right? And it gives me an address to choose from. It's important that I come down here and choose that address. Notice it's got a latitude and longitude. There's even a little map here. Okay, you can look at the map and see if that's making sense. And then you can zoom in and out on the map if you want to. And you click OK. Okay, so now I've got a good geocoded address. You've got fields for language, extension, nature of call. This caller needs help. Type of caller, is it the client? Is it an agency? Is it a friend? In this case, we'll say it's an agency because it's the fire department calling. I'm getting a call from a sergeant. It's from a fire department. This is the Wake County Fire Department. If there's an agency incident number, you can enter that. Don't have an on-scene contact. If we did, it would give us other fields, but we're running short on time, so I'm going to say no. Up here, you can enter a cross street, a neighborhood name. You can indicate if the caller has called before about this particular event. Do they need a callback, yes or no? And here, is Red Cross action required? Okay, this determines whether it's an event or just a call. If Red Cross action is required, we say yes. Notice it defaults to receive by national. I'm doing this as a duty officer, so I'm going to choose region. Okay? That's going to prevent any sort of automated notification going out to duty officers, and it's also going to tell National Dispatch that they don't have to sweat this one. I come down here. I can enter dispatcher notes if I want. What type of assistance is required? What's the event type? I'll say it's a single-family fire. When did it happen? It's happening right now. You can always adjust those values. It's a single-family home. Don't need any canteening. We've got 1 unit affected in this example, 2 adults, 1 child, and additional fields for things like pets and fatalities and so forth. Greater New York has a deal with the city that they have to track some stuff, so that's what that field's about. And at this point, I'm going to say okay. Okay, even though there's more work to do further down on this form, it's important that I save here. If you have client information, of course, you can go ahead and enter it. We'll say that this is Carla, caller. We've got a phone number for the call for the client as well, and that they are on scene. And I click OK. And now I've got that core event created. Okay, so it takes a minute for the system to know what's in there. The system doesn't know I'm the duty officer, so it's not going to be listed under my DO events. It's going to be listed under events, and you can see dispatch received by the region. Here it is, Medlin Drive. I'm going to open it up. From here, I have just a few things to do, and then I'm just up to activating the response just like before. I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom. Okay, I'm going to record the positive contact date and time because I'm the duty officer, and that tells the system we have a duty officer identified. I'm going to indicate that it's assigned to me. And at this point, I'm going to do one of two things, right? In this situation, my verification info is already here, so I'm just going to go, will Red Cross respond? Yes. And I can go ahead and activate this DAT response. If it were, like the client called in and I need to take steps to do the verification, I would go ahead and save after indicating that it's assigned to me and that there's a positive contact date and time. That tells everybody who might be watching that we have a duty officer for the event. And while I'm doing the work of verifying, nobody's worried about, who's going to catch this event and take care of it. Okay, so you would have an additional save under those circumstances. But here we go. I click OK. And now we're off to the races, and we're activating and doing everything we talked about earlier in the class. So that's how you do an event. That's how you get one entered. And of course, we've got reference materials that speak to each field as you go and where you do the saves and all those sorts of things. But hopefully that gives you a sense of what that piece is like. So we are bumping right up against the end of class. So if you guys don't mind, I'll do our closing pieces about where the training materials are and that kind of stuff. And, anybody who needs to go can then leave, of course, and I'll be happy to stay on and take additional questions as well, even past the time. That's no problem at all. So in terms of wrapping up, there are specific steps to, we're out of time, sadly, but if there is a way that the system will help you see if you may be creating a duplicate event, and then that's covered in the job tool, and you can check that out and see how it is that we handle that circumstance. Okay, so in terms of the various training materials, again, we've got a job tool that covers everything we talked about. These slides are available to you guys. We got videos for both the DAT dispatch workflow and the 3 ways to activate a DAT response. There's also, for those of you who might be interested in a deep dive on the minimum and maximum values on a DAT schedule, there's a video on that as well. And we do have office hours that you guys can come to. We've got a document posted. I'll show you where it is that links to all these other resources. And let me just show you where all this stuff lives. So I'm going to have to move this thing out of the way. Get out of the way. Okay. So here is the exchange. If you go out to the exchange and just do a search for RC View, you will have the opportunity to go to the DAT Dispatch Toolkit, and that's where the job tools are. So, the big one for you guys is working with RC View DAT Dispatch as a duty officer. That's where all the details and all the reference information lives, all the stuff we talked about. You also might want to check out the one about using RC View DAT Dispatch dashboards, because that'll just help you know what's going on those other tabs at your duty officer dashboard. Okay, we also have, and if you guys don't have access to it, your implementation leads do, a SharePoint site. And out at this SharePoint site under Documents, If you go under Documents, Duty Officer, that's where these training slides live. Okay? And if you go to Documents, Training Guidance, there is a document here called RC View DAT Dispatch Duty Officer Training Guidance. And if you go to that document, it tells you what the DAT members or general users are looking at for their training, so you can check that stuff out. It's good for you to know what they know. And then the stuff that's specific to duty officers is here. So here's a link to that video on the 3 ways to activate a response. Here's the job tools. Here's the link to the schedule for the office hours and so forth. So all that information is captured for you here under this duty officer guidance document. Okay, so got lots of training and reference materials for you guys. We know it's a lot of information, so don't expect you, of course, to remember everything we talked about this evening. The training materials, of course, are subject to update, especially these slides, right, as we notice typos and things like that. So just know that we are in the process of updating these as we go. Remember, these are your implementation leads. They can get you those materials if you're unable to access the SharePoint site. And if you have questions, some of you guys had DAT program questions about, what happens if a DAT leader isn't available to respond. Those are great questions for the DAT program. You can go to dat@redcross.org. They also have a toolkit out on the exchange that you can access. For RC View stuff, questions related to everything we're doing, you can post them to Yammer, or you can email rcview@redcross.org. Okay? So we're right at the top of the hour, just a minute or two past. Thank you guys very much for hanging in there. That's a long class and a lot of information. Big thanks to the panelists for all of your help. It's a big bite out of your day as well. So thank you guys very much. And what I'd like to do now is invite everyone who needs to go, but is too polite to drop off. Feel free to go ahead and go and enjoy the rest of your night. But if anyone has questions, I'm happy to stick around and answer as many questions as I can.